Hello everyone, myself Mr. Sumit Bodkhe and I welcome you all for the online lecture of subject biochemistry. I am working as an assistant professor at Saraswati Institute of Pharmacy, Kurtadi. Today I am going to discuss about or teach you about the subject biochemistry, which is in the course of B.Pharm course on second semester in first year. So for the first year, second semester, the subject is biochemistry. In that, the first chapter is biomolecules. So biomolecules, there are various types of biomolecules like carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, amino acids, nucleic acids. So these are all the amino acids. These are all the biomolecules. In that, today we are going to discuss about the carbohydrates. The specific. Today we are going to discuss about the carbohydrates. In the syllabus, there are various points which has to be covered, just like introduction, definition, classification, and functions and chemical nature of the particular biomolecules, which are carbohydrate, protein, amino acids, and lipids. In today's lecture, we are discussing about the points which are introduction and definition of carbohydrates. Along with that, functions of carbohydrates, then classification of carbohydrates, and some basic structures of carbohydrates. So, the carbohydrates, the definition of carbohydrate implies as these are literally means hydrates of carbon. So, carbohydrates are nothing but the hydrates of carbon. The actual definition is carbohydrates may be defined as polyhydroxyaldehydes or ketones or compounds which produce them on hydrolysis. So carbohydrates are the compounds which are either polyhydroxyaldehydes, meaning there are multiple hydroxy group present, as well as the functional group present in that carbohydrate is aldehyde. Again, there can be ketones, the functional group may be present is ketones. All these compounds are produced from the compound by hydrolysis. So this is the general definition of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates have a specific role in our human system for providing energy. There are several examples of carbohydrates like glucose, maltose, sucrose, fructose, etc., starch. These are the primary examples of carbohydrates. After that, these carbohydrates are divided into saccharides and non-saccharides, or saccharides or non-saccharides. These are sugars or non-sugars. Saccharides are sugar and non-saccharides are non-sugar parts. So before going towards the classification of carbohydrates, let's see some functions of carbohydrates. So the primary function of carbohydrate is to provide energy for the day-to-day activities. So whatever the energy we get is in the human system we get is derived from the carbohydrate. In our life, carbohydrate is a major source of energy. Secondly, these carbohydrates are the building blocks of some proteins like glycocalyx, which is in the form of glycoproteins and glycolipids. The third function of the carbohydrates, they provide, they work as a precursor for the compounds like amino acids or lipids. So these carbohydrates can work as a precursor for the compounds like lipids or proteins. Last function of the carbohydrates, they provide a short-term energy requirement in the form of glycogens. I will just summarize all the points. The function of carbohydrates is that firstly they provide energy in the form of ATP. Secondly, they are the components of cell wall in the form of glycocalyx or in the form of glycoproteins or glycolipids. Glycoproteins are the conjugated product of carbohydrates along with proteins, and glycolipids are the conjugated products of carbohydrate along with lipids. So they provide energy a single 1 gram of carbohydrate provides 4 calories of energy. For additional information, the lipids provide 9 calories. The lipids provide 9 calories, and proteins they provide 4 calories. So if you consume 1 gram of carbohydrate, they will provide 4 calories of energy. Similarly, if you consume 1 gram of or 1 ml of lipid or oil, they will provide 9 kilocalories. And if you consume 1 gram of protein, they will provide 4 calories. The calories provided from the carbohydrates are in the form of ATPs. So first function is they provide energy. Second function, they are involved in the synthesis of cell wall in the form of glycocalyx and in the form of glycoproteins or glycolipids, which we have earlier discussed. Third function is they provide short-term energy requirements in the form of glycogen. So glycogens are nothing but the homopolysaccharides, the one type of polysaccharides. When we consume energy, the glucose in the form of glucose, the glucose is converted to glycogen. If body demands energy, the glucose is utilized, and once the threshold is exceeded, this is the additional glucose we have consumed is get converted in the form of glycogen, and this glycogen is primarily stored in the liver and in the muscles. So as per requirement of energy, this glycogen can be again break down in the form of glucose, and that glucose will provide energy. If we consume much more amount of glucose, then what will happen? The glycogen is firstly glucose is converted to glycogen, and the excessive glycogen is then get converted to adipose tissues, which we call as lipids or fats. In body, the glycogen is converted into the fats. So these are the major four functions of carbohydrate. First one was that they provide energy in the form of ATP. They are involved in the cell wall. Also, they are work as a precursor for the formation of various compounds like proteins and lipids. And last function of the carbohydrates was they provide energy in the form of glycogen. This one more interesting thing about the glycogen. When we consume glucose, it get converted to glycogen, and the glycogen, if kept unused, it get converted to lipid or fats. And if we want to consume the lipids, or if we want to break down the lipid, the process I have discussed earlier has to be reversed, meaning that the lipid must be break down into glycogen, and then it must be consumed as a glucose. So this is all about the definition and functions of the carbohydrates. The second part or the third part of the syllabus is classification of carbohydrates. So this classification, firstly carbohydrates are divided into two types, which is sugar and non-sugar. The saccharide term is used for sugar. These are sweet in taste and they can be dissolved in the water. The second part is non-sugar part. The non-sugar part is they are somewhat tasteless in nature and they are not dissolved in water. Sugar. The classification of carbohydrate contains sugar, and the sugar is divided into two types: monosaccharides and oligosaccharides. As you can see, saccharides is a term used for sugar. Mono means one. So as the name suggests, monosaccharides mean one sugar molecule. Oligosaccharides is the term for oligo is for few, and saccharides, as we have already discussed, saccharide is for sugar part. So in monosaccharide there is only one molecule of sugar, and oligosaccharide there are several molecules of sugar which are combined together to form a compound. And in the similar manner, polysaccharides means poly means many. So many sugar molecules combine together to form a polysaccharide. So monosaccharides, on the basis of the functional group present, they are classified in the two types, which are aldoses and ketoses. As the name suggests, aldoses stands for the carbohydrates which contain aldehyde functional group, and the ketones, as the name suggests, this carbohydrates contains ketone functional group. So here you can see an example of glucose and aldoses. In aldoses, the example of the aldoses is glucose and glyceraldehyde. Also, as well as along with that, the examples of ketoses are fructose and dihydroxyacetone. So these are the two examples of each classes. Further, the monosaccharides are also classified on the basis of number of carbon atoms present in the molecules, which is not on the board. The monosaccharides are also classified on the basis of number of carbon atoms present in that molecular compound. So firstly, if there are 3 carbon atoms present, like in the case of glyceraldehyde. In the case of glyceraldehyde, the aldehyde group is present. Along with that, it is the glyceraldehyde is made up of 3 carbon atoms. That's why it is also called as trioses. It is called as trioses. Along with that, if there are 4 carbon atoms present, then it is called as tetroses. If 5 carbon atoms are present in the carbohydrate, it is called as pentoses, and further if 6 carbon atoms are present, it is called as hexoses, and if 7 carbon atoms are present, it is called as heptoses. So glyceraldehyde is an example of trioses, meaning in glyceraldehyde there are 3 carbon atoms are present. Nextly, glucose is considered as a hexoses because in glucose the number of carbon atoms are 6. Similarly, dihydroxyacetone is also considered as a trioses because it contains 3 carbon atoms, and fructose is considered as a hexoses because it contains 6 carbon atoms. The example of in that I want to give one more example of pentoses, which are the 5 carbon atoms are present in that carbohydrate. Pentoses, the example of pentoses is ribose. Ribose is a sugar which is present in nucleic acid. So you must have heard the term ribonucleic acid, meaning that in that the pentose sugar present, which is ribose, and deoxyribonucleic acid, which is the deoxyribose sugar present in the DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. So deoxyribose is nothing but the derivative of ribose. So these riboses comes under the category of pentoses, meaning there are 5 carbon atoms present in that compound. Okay. So monosaccharides are classified on the basis of 2 terms. First one was on the basis of functional group present, which was aldoses, meaning that aldehyde is present, and second one is ketoses, meaning the ketone group is present in that compound or carbohydrate. Secondly, these sugars are classified on the basis of monosaccharide and oligosaccharide. As already we have discussed, oligosaccharides mean few sugar molecules. So oligosaccharides are the carbohydrate in which 2 sugar units are linked together, are combined together by the glycosidic bond to form oligosaccharides. 2 monosaccharides are linked together with the help of glycosidic bond to form oligosaccharides. So oligosaccharides are the compounds which contains from 2 to 10 molecules of saccharides. In disaccharides, oligosaccharides are classified on the basis of two major parts, which are disaccharides and trisaccharides. As the name suggests, disaccharide will be the number of monosaccharide units will be 2, and in the trisaccharide the number of sugar units will be 3. the example of disaccharides are sucrose, lactose, maltose. So these are the examples of disaccharides. And third one is trisaccharides, which is in trisaccharide the number of the monosaccharide units will be 3. The simple example of trisaccharide is raffinose, and along with that pannose is also considered as a trisaccharide. So this is all about the carbohydrate part and the sugar part. So these are considered as a sugar parts which are sweet in taste and soluble in water. As you can know, sucrose is present in sugar canes. The example lactose, which is present in sugar or milk. The sucrose is present in sugar cane, and lactose, which is also a disaccharide, which is present in milk. Okay. So now we are going towards the second part, which is non-sugar part. As the name says, non-sugar means non-saccharides, which are kind of tasteless in nature, and these are not soluble in the water. The non-sugar part is polysaccharides. So the name itself tells the story. Poly means many, saccharides means sugar units. So polysaccharide is nothing but the many sugar units combined together to form a polysaccharides. More than 10 units are linked together to form a polysaccharides. The polysaccharide is again divided into two types, which are homopolysaccharide and heteropolysaccharide. So homopolysaccharide, as the name suggests, homo means similar. So in the polysaccharide, if 2 units or more than 10 units which are combined together to form are similar, then it comes under the category of homopolysaccharides. If different units, more than 10, if combined together to form a single compound, it is considered as a heteropolysaccharides. So the polysaccharides are classified into two types, homopolysaccharide and heteropolysaccharide. The example of homopolysaccharide is starch as well as the glycogen, which we have already discussed. So in glycogen, what there is happen, the glucose molecule, among more than 10, which comes around 10,000 units. So these units combine together to form a glycogen. And in the glycogen, there is only one type of sugar, which is monosaccharide or sugar, which is glucose. So more than 10 units, maybe up to 10,000. So these units combine together to form a glycogen. Similarly, starch, cellulose, these are also the examples of homopolysaccharide. Along with that, there is a next category, which is heteropolysaccharides. In heteropolysaccharides, what happens? There are two different molecules combined together to form a polysaccharides. Meaning, the two units which are going to combine are different. The example is heparin and hyaluronic acid. So different units combined together, different monosaccharide units combined together to form a heteropolysaccharide. So this is the classification of non-sugar part, polysaccharides and homo and hetero. So after that, there is one more important concept we have to discuss, is that the structure of the glucose molecule. Here, as you can see, this is the structure of glucose in the form of anomer. So glucose exists in two types of anomers, which are alpha D glucose and beta D glucose. So if in alpha D glucose, as you can see, both the structures are of alpha D glucose, but in different projections. So there are two projections. First one is this is called as Fischer projection, and second one is Haworth projection. Fischer projection and Haworth projection. So the structure of the glucose can be drawn in two patterns, which are Fischer projection and Haworth projection. First one is Fischer projection. In you can see that this is the anomeric carbon, and the alpha and beta is depend on the position of the hydrogen group. So this is the anomeric carbon first, and if hydroxyl group is attached to the anomeric carbon is opposite in the direction of the hydroxymethyl group. If the hydroxyl group, this OH group, if this hydroxyl group is attached, is opposite in the direction of this hydroxymethyl group or CH2OH group. If the OH is in the opposite direction, then it is considered as a alpha, and vice versa. If the hydroxyl group is present in this position, which is similar with the hydroxymethyl group, then it is considered as a beta. So this glucose or monosaccharides can present in the form of two different anomers, which is alpha anomer and beta anomer. So this is all about the classification, definition, functions, and basic structure of glucose. Again, we are going to let's quickly revise definition. The carbohydrates may be defined as the polyhydroxy aldehydes or ketones or compounds which produce them on hydrolysis. So simple. Here I would like to draw a structure of glucose. So here you can see this is the structure of D-glucose. In this structure, you can see that the aldehyde group is present. So to just summarize all of that, aldoses glucose comes under the category aldoses because the aldehyde group is present. And if we change the functional group to the second carbon and shift the hydroxymethyl group to the first one, the structure will be converted to the ketone group or ketosis. The example will be fructose. So just summarize all of the part. Definition: carbohydrates may be defined as the polyhydroxy aldehydes or ketones or compounds which produce them on hydrolysis. So these are the compounds which contains aldehyde group and ketone groups or the compounds which produce them on hydrolysis. Second part is functions of carbohydrates. In functions of carbohydrates, what happens? There are four major functions of carbohydrates, which are firstly they provide energy in the form of fuel, or functions of carbohydrates. There are four functions of carbohydrates, which are firstly they provide energy in the form of ATPs. Second, they work as a precursor, meaning precursor are the molecules from which the second compounds, or the precursor are the molecules from which different compounds can be formed. So carbohydrate work as a precursor in the formation of glycoproteins, glycolipids. Third function of the carbohydrates, it gives a framework in the formation of cell wall in the form of glycocalyx, and with the, along with glycoproteins and glycolipids. Glycoprotein is the glycoprotein moiety is formed from carbohydrate and proteins, and glycolipids is a moiety formed from carbohydrates and lipids. Fourth function is provides the short-term energy requirements, as we have already discussed, in the form of glycogen. When we consume glucose, it gets converted to glycogen and stored in the liver and muscles. And when we require the energy, it gets converted back to glucose and utilized for the normal day-to-day functions. Third one, third point which has to be covered is classification of carbohydrates. The carbohydrates are classified on the basis of 2 points: sugars and non-sugar. Sugar are soluble in water and non-sugar part is not soluble in water. Sugar part is further divided into two parts which are monosaccharides and oligosaccharides. Mono stands for one, saccharide stands for sugar, as well as oligo stands for few and saccharide stands for sugars. So in monosaccharide there are four monosaccharides are further classified on the basis of 2 points. First one is based on the functional group present in here, the aldoses and ketoses. Aldoses meaning in that the functional group is aldehyde, as we have seen already, and the ketoses means the functional group is ketone. The example of aldoses is glyceraldehyde and glucose, and the example of ketoses is fructose and dihydroxyacetone. In oligosaccharides, there are oligosaccharides are again classified into two types. These are disaccharides and trisaccharides. Disaccharides, as the name suggests, di means two. In disaccharide, there are two molecules of sugar, and trisaccharide they contain three molecules of sugar. Oligo stands for few, which is from 2 to 10. So disaccharides, the example of disaccharide is sucrose, and the example of trisaccharide is raffinose. Again, the last point of the classification of carbohydrate is non-sugar part. In non-sugar part, there is only one classification, which is polysaccharides. And polysaccharide is further classified in two parts, which is homopolysaccharide and heteropolysaccharide. So homopolysaccharide meaning these are the polysaccharides in which single type of monosaccharide units are linked together, which is starch, cellulose, and another example is glycogen. And in the heteropolysaccharides, the example of the heteropolysaccharides is heparin and hyaluronic acid. So these are the examples of homopolysaccharide and heteropolysaccharides. So in the glycogen part, which comes under the homopolysaccharide, these are these monosaccharide, which is glucose unit combined together to form a glycogen. Again, this is all about the classification of the carbohydrate. One more point which is remaining, that in the monosaccharide, the monosaccharides are classified on the basis of functional group present. Along with that, the monosaccharides are again classified on the basis of number of carbon atoms present. So, in that monosaccharides, if the monosaccharide contains 3 carbon, it gets classified as a trioses. If it contains 4 carbon atoms, it is classified as tetroses. If it contains 5 carbon atoms, it is classified as a pentoses. If 6 carbon atoms are present, it is classified as a hexose. So the example of 3 carbon atom is glyceraldehyde and dihydroxyacetone. The example of 5 carbon atom present is ribose, which are present in nucleic acids, and the example of hexoses or the 6 carbon atom present is glucose as well as fructose. So this is all about the classification of the carbohydrates. And the last part, the structure of glucose, it is this is the structure of glucose, but the structure of glucose can be denoted in two types, which are Fischer projection and Haworth projection. So based on that, the glucose is classified into two anomers, which are alpha D glucose and alpha beta D glucose. In alpha D glucose, what happens? The hydroxyl group which is present, which is against in the opposite direction of the hydroxymethyl group or CH2OH group. If the hydroxyl group is present in the opposite direction, it is considered as a alpha. And if the hydroxyl group is present which is similar or in the same direction of the hydroxymethyl or CH2OH group, it is considered as a beta. So this glucose is present in the two forms, which are alpha D glucopyranols and beta D glucopyranols. And this is pyran, as the name suggests. Pyran is for the heterocyclic ring or heterocyclic structure present in that compound. So this is all about the carbohydrates. We have seen about the introduction, definition, then functions of carbohydrates, then classification of carbohydrates, and the basic structure or the main types of projection in which the structure of the glucose is represented. So the important point in the carbohydrates is the chemical nature and chemical properties of carbohydrates, which we will see in the upcoming lectures. Thank you.